Welcome back to Threshold Conversations. This series is devoted to the moments when old ways of understanding ourselves, our lives, and the world no longer fully hold, and something deeper, more integrated, and more alive begins to ask for our attention. These are conversations at the threshold, between knowing and not knowing, between structure and mystery, between who we've been and who we're becoming. My guest today is Ani Lipitz. Ani is a student and teacher of Torah Mysticism, an energy healing practitioner, and an equestrian. At the heart of her work is simple but profound mission to remind each person of their innate identity as a spark of the Endless One, and to help reawaken awareness of divine presence and purpose in all things. Ani's life and work are rooted not only in study and teaching, but in lived relationship with the land, with animals, with family, and with the subtle realms of energy and spirit that shape our experience far more than we often realize. She lives in New York with her 4 children, her horse, and her dog, bringing mysticism, healing, and embodied spirituality into the texture of everyday life. In today's conversation, we'll explore what it means to live with awareness of the infinite in a very finite world, how remembrance shapes healing, and how standing at this threshold moment, personally and collectively, invites us into a deeper relationship with who we truly are. I'm grateful to be in this conversation today. Welcome, Ani, to Threshold Conversations.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so psyched.
I am excited to do this. I wanted to jump right in here with some questions for you. And one of them is really, do you sense that we are in a collective threshold right now? And that's like where old spiritual and social frameworks are disconnecting. And if so, what does healing look like on the other side of this threshold?
First of all, yes. And second of all, oh my gosh, I think on the other side of this threshold, well, I feel like right now, people who are in the like intuitive healing space, or even people who are in the healing space, but not necessarily intuitive healing, and I even mean like doctors and therapists, people in more traditional disciplines, but if they're plugged in and they're trying to bring something more into what they're doing, like we're kind of like a bridge right now. We're kind of like, I feel like most of us is rooted in what's coming across the threshold, and we're drawing whoever's going to come across that threshold right now. On the other side of this, I think that we are going to be reclaiming a lot of our abilities to heal psychically. Like we're going to really be reclaiming that mind body link. We're going to be able to do a lot of like regeneration. We're going to be a lot better, those of us in the intuitive healing space, at scanning people and moving energy. And where a lot of us have ongoing clients, I think God willing, we'll get to a place where we're one and done with people. Um,
Amen.
the other thing, though, is that the people that we're working with have to have the psychological infrastructure to actually accept an immediate healing. Because for a lot of people, they're deeply programmed, and it's always our programs, our inner programs that are deep inner programs that are dictating external reality. So if you don't have the psychological or psychic infrastructure to actually accept an immediate, like, oh, that's done. That lifelong thing is gone. Um, then you might not be a Kaylee or a vessel for it yet. So I think there are going to be a lot of shifts on the collective level that prime people's psyches for that. So I think there's going to be a lot of that. And I also think that there is going to be a lot of technology that is released. I deeply believe and dare say no, just from the depths of my being, that it already exists and it's either been suppressed or whatever it is, like quantum type of technology that will also allow for immediate healing, even of like acute physical trauma, like if God forbid there's an accident or something like that. So I think on the other side of this, I mean, I hope us healers are put out of a job sooner rather than later. So I tell all my clients that I really can't wait for the day that you are like, no, I don't need Ani anymore.
Beautiful. What do you think is different about this wave, this threshold that we're changing compared to some of the earlier ones that we've experienced over the last, 10, 15, 20 years?
I think the percentage of collective consciousness that is awake now, that has done the integration work to wake up and realize more and more the nature of this place that we're in and the forces that drive it in a way of das, in a way of like deeply internalized, like, oh, that's what that is, and that's what that is. For example, you know, people who have studied Torah mysticism for the past however many hundreds of years, um, being able to use words like klipa and things like that, but not really be able to actually point in actual reality what it actually is in a nuanced way. I think more and more people, regardless of whether they have the Kabbalistic terminology, most people don't, are able to look around and be like, oh, all those conspiracy theories. I love when they say that conspiracy theories are just spoiler alerts. Like, oh, no, that's actually what's going on here. And I don't know if like you experienced this in your own awakening process, but it was it was existentially traumatizing at first to realize like this is a really dangerous place. Like this is actually a really dangerous place. And like all my love and light is not what me sitting here feeling like, oh, I'm just a being of love and light, and like this dissociated coping mechanism way was not actually going to be worth much. I had to actually like grow some muscles and grow some cojones and
Yeah.
show up in my own personal life that way and really and be willing to show up, publicly that way too. So I think the difference is that the mass awakening has happened. It's not fringe anymore.
How do you feel about the word healing? And is that appropriate terminology for what is happening? It's kind of it's really
Yeah,
kind of a buzzword right now. There's
right,
healers, there's energy healers, and there's psychic
right.
and this and that. How do you feel about that? And do you have a terminology that you like better?
I have never been fully comfortable with that word because I think at its core it doesn't capture what's happening, but I have not been able to come up with something better at this point. Like that's the concept of healing. It's really about bringing back into balance or integration or wholeness. Like Kabbalistically, the word for healing is refuah, and that corresponds with the elemental energy or sephira of Tiferes. They're etymologically linked. And Tiferes is the elemental energy of integration and balance. So it really is all about bringing things back into balance and integration, and flow, like a balanced, centralized flow. Um, but I don't know, have you come up with a better word? Because I have not.
I have not, but it seems to be such a process. And it seems to be, there's the stages of grief, that people go through that are very well known. But I'm finding that the people that are awakening are having something similar. So for me personally, there was this time of disassociating. I don't
Yeah.
want to know about that. Then there was actually a period of anger. It's
Yeah.
like, why was this hidden from me? There's so much more out here. And then moving through that, you go into wonder and awe and all of these different stages. And so it is really this entire process. Are you seeing that with your clients as well, or with yourself?
With myself, for sure. I've gone through those phases in microcosm and macrocosm multiple times over this journey. And because as you go deeper, it's like you think you landed somewhere, and then all of a sudden it's like, nope, this is getting ripped off too, and you got to go even deeper. Sorry, you haven't landed yet. Um, and with my clients, yes, 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 especially as they're realizing that maybe the ways that they were taught religiously were just kind of mindless and um not actually where it's at, or the words that were taught to them actually mean something way beyond what anybody who even taught them the words were understanding. But ultimately it's like it is every individual soul, it is their journey with the Ein Sof, it is their journey with God, and they're going to go through it in this incarnation or another one. So let's try to go through it now.
Awesome. Let's dig into that a little bit. I know some of your work really talks about encountering the infinite directly versus
Yeah.
through structure or belief. How did that begin for you, and how do you share that out with people?
Oh man, well that began for me very organically in early childhood, and then, it turned off for a long time. It turned back on when I had a massive spiritual awakening right before I turned 19, and I was just like, give me God, this is all God, give me God, I just want to know God. And then interestingly, it turned off again for me in a really big and horrible way when I became religious again. And it's like all of the truth and light that I had discovered and known, and all of a sudden it got turned off, and I was like in this murky fish tank, like, wait, where did it go? And why is everybody swimming around like, oh, maybe there's a God, and like, um and then, a few five, six, yeah, more like 6, 7 years ago, it started to turn back on for me again when I saw that there was kind of a movement of people within the religion starting to embrace intuitive gifts and things like that, and healing was starting to become a thing, and feminine rising in a really Das way. And I keep saying Das, which means experiential knowledge, because this is the center of actual Torah, is supposed to be Das of God, which means straight up experience of God. And over the course of this journey, I've started to see how the religion kind of became and a lot of the religious practice and dogma is like a massive klipa, a massive covering, these layers covering over the das that we're supposed to have, and provides horrendous interference actually with our ability to have the actual das of God, this experiential relationship with God. Um, and it's talked about that in the time of the Geula, the redemption, ascension, basically where we are now is when people will reclaim that sovereign, individualized relationship, experiential relationship with God, and we're really starting to swim into those vast oceans of godliness kind of in earnest now. At least the first few of us are starting to push off from shore.
How do you advise somebody who may have tasted that direct encounter, but then I've seen it myself, I've experienced it myself. It's so easy and secure and safe to fall back into structure and
Right,
this dogma of, well, this is what being good looks like, this is what I
right,
even though I know so much more is out there.
right.
How do you help people transition from that bounce back that they have?
The biggest thing is that you have to respect your psyche and your parts that are still operating in those structures and need to operate in those structures, because your identity is there. And we have to understand that God is equally present even in those places, even when we're not feeling it there. So you have to allow yourself that bounce back when your psyche needs it in order to not break, because we're not looking to become crazy and ill from this process. And, sometimes people will get a download that will totally blow out their circuits, and it takes time to recover and intense assistance to recover. So we have to let that bounce back into the old familiar be a part of our divinely guided process, because God isn't looking to blow out anybody's circuits in a way that damages them or harms them. Even though it can feel like we're being damaged or harmed sometimes, there's a deep surrender needed to let the Ein Sof, to let God and your team of Malachim, angels and spirits and souls that are with you, bring you forward, and then they let you go back so you can integrate. And in Kabbalistic terminology, that's called Ratzo V'Shuv, the run and the return of the soul, where you running into these new spaces, and then there's a return back to that baseline. And we have to know that the baseline will keep changing. On the other side of that, though, is when we've tasted something, when we've tasted a new level of light, a new reality, and sometimes we are given a choice moment in life of, am I going to take a step on this new path, or am I going to go back in the old direction? And that that choice could make your path harder or easier. If you choose to push through the fear and take that new step onto the new path, it could make it easier for yourself. And it could be a pivotal choice moment where it's like, well, if you go back that way, there you're gonna have to take the scenic route to get back to that new path.
Beautiful. That really brings to mind our children. And I know children are, a huge part of your life as well. And it seems like, from what I'm experiencing, so many of the children are already ahead of where we are, and we're almost catching up to them. Do you want to talk about that parent child dynamic a little bit, about where we are
Yes,
in this process of going forward and back, and our children are already like seeing things
definitely.
so much more than we are?
Definitely. There's a deep humility that's needed in that too, because I see a lot of people who are like, oh, my kids are such big souls. And they a lot of times they are bigger souls than we are. They have more power than we do. And unconsciously, we don't realize that we're actually starting to lean on them and being like, oh, we're those such, yeah, it's a huge soul, but they're still in a child's psyche and the child still needs to be parented. And I tell this, I work on this with a lot of my clients, where it's like, we do have to continue striving forward to meet our kids, but we also have to still be able to contain them while keeping in mind we're being asked to do this massive balancing act where it's like honoring the massiveness of the soul and their literal need to do things in a different way, in an expanded way. And at the same time, we're being asked to still contain them and contain their soul in the child's psyche. Because I do see a lot of I do see it quite a bit as this catchphrase. Oh, they're just, they're just a big neshama. Like, they're just a big soul. And then, and some parents who aren't really in the work themselves or enough in the work themselves use it as a bypass to stepping up as a parent and to doing their own evolutionary work to be able to still parent this child, this psyche that was entrusted to you to help build its vessels. So it's a really where we are being asked to walk like a razor thin tightrope with that. But if we were given that job, then we have the resources to do it. We have to work for it.
What are some keys to success with that? If a parent's just like, I'm trying to do my own work and I'm trying to parent and I see all this massive potential within my child,
Right.
and challenges too, because they're going to challenge us,
Totally.
right? They're going to bring things up for us that are our unhealed wounds and paths that we haven't dealt with yet.
Totally. The first key is always to own your own triggers and first thing is always just don't take the trigger out on your child. Like when they're bringing all of the stuff up in you, that's your thing to deal with. And so then as a corollary to that, if you make a boo-boo and you rupture, go back and repair. Always do the repair work, right? When we make a mistake and we scream or we snap or we're overly sharp or overly harsh or whatever it is, after you get collected, like you go back and do the repair work. And secondly, like if you don't have these people in your life already, first pray to have resources, right? People in your life who get it, who really get what's going on spiritually and psychologically in this universe right now, who can, help you to give you some perspective, to give you some insight, especially, if you have people who are intuitively gifted and also understand just basic psychology, basic human psychology and development. People who can maybe take an objective look at the situation and be like, okay, yeah, I see what the soul is doing. I also see what its vessel needs because you're parenting the vessel. And what you're doing is giving that soul an intact and as expansive a vessel as possible to work with. So it really like just the needs are, safety and boundaries, um, and attunement, connection, being seen, being heard. It's the same things we all need. We just kind of, might have to hold space for things that other people may find weirder, but we don't. We don't necessarily find it so weird, but other people might, and that's okay.
You brought up prayer. I'd like to dive into that a little bit. Um, do you find a difference in prayer, um, from the container, that once was, that people are moving from, the structure and belief into this direct connection with the infinite. Do you find a difference in prayer there, or are your clients finding differences in prayer?
Yeah, I think a lot of people are feeling the need to like put down their prayer books, and are also finding that just the conversational aspect of prayer, where it's like I'm in a constant conversation with God, whether verbally or internally or both, like constantly, that is the level that I find a lot of people are moving into. And I found, as I've, observed myself and evolved, I found that like my old energies of fear or desperation that thank God are not so relevant to my daily experience anymore. Instead, I'm like, well, what can prayer become now, when it doesn't have to be this thing of like, oh my God, I need something and it's intense and like, whoa, what can it be now that I'm more of a grown up? Like what's this interaction like now between me and God, where it's no longer around, me needing to like emotionally unload on God or feel some type of comfort. And instead it's like, ooh, how can we play together, God? And I think that's where what we're moving into.
Amazing. I haven't read it yet, but I heard about a book called Dangerous Prayers. And the concept in the book is really, if what you prayed for in the last week and a half was granted, came true, whatever you want to say about it, how many lives would have changed? How much good would you have done for the world? How much impact would have happened from those prayers? And it really made me, think about it. It's like, yeah, I may have this constant dialogue, but am I really challenging myself to have big prayers,
Yes,
to make the big asks?
yes, and because it comes down to nervous system capacity. So it's like if I have a big ask, and like, do I actually have the capacity right now or the programming that will allow God to give that to me in real time? Or is that going to, blow out my circuits? Or are there other parts of me that are undermining my prayer frequency wise or programming wise? So that's why it's like the prayer, like prayer has to always be coupled then with like, with inner work. And, you will have some people approach you to do work and you see that they're looking for like a magic pill, like someone who's like, oh, work on me so I can make a lot of money. And I'm like, well, I can help to release, some blocks around that, but like that's your day-to-day, moment to moment. How are you showing up? How are you feeling about yourself? How do you view reality, type of a thing?
Yeah, absolutely. The more I go down this own path of my own healing, the less I see the blocks, the more I see that, anything is possible. And that sounds
Yeah.
so cliche to say that, but reality, the infinite is infinite. There,
Yes.
it's, to say that there's only so much that we can do really is a lie. And it has to do with what our own containers are capable of and what we're willing to grow into. And that growth
Yes.
can be kind of triggering for people. If somebody's been listening to this conversation and they're feeling triggered by it, but they're also feeling curious about it, what would be their first step?
Ooh, that's a great question. If you're feeling, I would say get curious about that trigger. And if you already have somebody that you work with, bring up like, hey, this and this triggered me about this video that I saw. Like, can we explore that? And if you're not working with somebody, if you sit with yourself, and even if you are working with somebody, you can just sit with yourself and be like, what exactly triggered me there? And let me listen to myself and listen to whatever part wants to come up and what was scary or upsetting about what I heard. So I would say like get curious about the trigger, because that's going to lead you into where your next the work is.
Beautiful. How can somebody reach out to you if they would like to work with you?
Best place to start, since I'm not going to give out my phone number on YouTube, is would be to find me on WhatsApp, which is, oh my God, I don't even know my own WhatsApp handle. Can I look that up real quick?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
Go for it.
Or not WhatsApp, I'm sorry, Instagram. What the heck am I talking about? Instagram, sending me an Instagram message. If you can get a hold of my number from somebody that might know me, go ahead and WhatsApp me or text me. Or if you don't, then on Instagram, I am at Ani, Ani _Lipitz, Lipitz.
Beautiful. Thank you, Ani, so much for being here and for all
My
your
pleasure.
insight. It was really wonderful talking with you.
Wonderful talking with you as well.
Thank you for spending this time with us. If you enjoyed the episode, please like and share. It's the easiest way to support the program and help others find it. Until next time, take good care, and I'll see you on the next episode.